Hello again. Kabbalah is essentially a skeleton, a scaffolding, a structure on which to hang our souls, our bodies, our spirits, our minds and our emotions. And it's almost like snakes and ladders. It's a pathway up to the divine or down. And we can move backwards and forwards across the tree in our everyday lives, but the way to get to communication with the divine is straight up the central column on Jacob's ladder or straight up the central column on the tree of life itself. Now, this diagram is based on this. This is the menorah, and this was in the first and second temple of the Hebrews. And it does reflect the four worlds and the whole of this structure sort of drawn out. And you can see that this is the divine world of Absolute, this is the Beriatic world of Berea, this is the Yetziratic world, the one of emotions, the one where human beings spend most of our time, and below is the Asiatic world or physical reality. And Kabbalah teaches us a lot about our egos and our true selves. And unless we actually understand the importance of the ego, the importance of using the ego to support the self, then we get lost in ego. And this whole world is pretty lost in ego at the moment, and I'm not excluding myself from that. I've just gone through my mother's house because she's moved to a retirement home, and I like to think of myself as quite ecologically savant, try not to use plastic, try to eat good, wholesome, organic foods whenever possible, eat as much vegetarian food as possible. However, my mother uses plastic. And in clearing out her house, we have had to pick up a vast amount of plastic utensils and dusters and that kind of thing, all of which is incredibly useful, but nothing that I would have chosen for myself. And I'm a Taurian, so I don't like wasting things. Taurus, by the way, is very practical. It's the sign that gets things done. It's very useful to know a little bit of astrology with Kabbalah, because that can help you understand your sun, which is your true self, and your moon, which is your ego. So my sun is Taurus, my moon is Scorpio. That's two fixed signs. And the moon, or the ego, is always the part of us that cares what other people think of us. It's very tribal. Yesod, the ego, lives in the family or the tribe. We do what is done by our family. We have our own favourite football team. We have our own favourite sport. But an awful lot of it is reflected back on what people think of us. So my Yesod at the moment has a bit of a problem bringing all this stuff from my mother, which Taurus and Scorpio aren't going to waste. Neither of those signs is going to waste anything. No, we use up everything. Thank you very much. We're very thrifty. But now I'm worried about the fact that my friends, my Kabbalistic group here, are going to come around and go, ew, she's got plastic. Now, they're probably not, but this is the malfunction of Yesod, of the ego, caring more about what the other thinks about you and having the other judge you. The other thing about Yesod to understand is that it has to have an enemy. My tribe, your tribe. What we do is right, what you do is wrong. You can sum that up in a funny way. I think it was, again, my mother, who's my greatest spiritual teacher, defined it. She didn't put it in a definition as such, but it basically goes along the lines of this, which is, I streak my hair, my friend colours her hair, the person I don't like dyes her hair. And it's all in the terminology of what we do is right, what they do is not as good as what we do, therefore what they do is wrong. Nearly all wars come from that level of Yesod, which is we're right, therefore we should have the oil. We're right, therefore we should have the land. We're the ones who are superior. Yesod loves to play the superior inferior game, and Yesod is the source of pretty much all the blame and shame in our society. Why? Well, basically because we're not raising ourselves properly nowadays. We're not raising ourselves in villages, in societies, with places where the child can feel valued according to their own particular talents. We're very much city orientated now. We're very much education oriented, and quite often we lose that initial value of attachment to adults who can train us in the things that we're going to be very good at. So our Yesods malfunction from very, very young, because we're still very primitively wired at the back of the brain here, and we haven't got used to living in cities. So quite often, if you've ever heard of Gabor Mate, do go and look him up. He's on YouTube. He does wonderful work about how we block off parts of our psyche when we're very, very young. And when we block them off because we have to attach to parental figures or to peer figures if we don't have parents in order to learn how to grow up. The human child is so defenseless that we need something or somebody or some tradition to feel safe in, so that we can grow up and know how to behave and how to survive. But if our parents aren't wise or skillful, and so many of our parents aren't, and I'll include myself in that, then quite often the child actually has to block off what they know of the parent that is not good, because otherwise they couldn't handle being raised by that parent. And we must love, or we must at least get attention in order to grow up. And what happens there is that Yesod here stops talking to Tiferet. Tiferet is our true self. Tiferet is the one person we came to be, who we really, really are, whereas Yesod is who we think we are, who we've been taught to be. And we're meant to grow from Yesod, having a strong boundary, a strong foundation taught to us in our youth, so we can individuate and grow into true, strong human beings, working with discernment and loving kindness at the soul level. But we don't do that so often, because when we block off some of our psyche because of our childhood, then we are also blocking off some of our immune system. We're giving it instructions we don't want to work properly, and we're also losing our connection to the planet. And this is so important ecologically now, because Yesod in the Yetziratic world here is the Da'at of the physical world, and Da'at is the point in the tree of life which worlds communicate to each other. So when we cut off at Yesod, when we cut off aspects of our parents or our upbringing that we don't like or we don't feel safe with, we cut off a lot of our gut feeling and our connection to the land. And we can see this in the way we treat the planet. We are not connected anymore. And I'm very blessed because I live in the countryside, so I'm reconnecting quite strongly and have done over the last decade. But for the majority of us, it's really quite difficult for us to actually work with the gut feeling that tells us whether we're eating nutritionally, whether we're eating what we need to eat emotionally, or what our body needs to eat. And basically, we are very, very lost in this Yesodic world now. And we're not interested so much in getting to Tiferet, because not only when we individuate do we feel less safe, and we also think about individuals being famous and therefore the tall poppy syndrome, people trying to cut them down. But when we get to Tiferet, then we are accessing our soul. And when we access our soul, we understand that we are responsible. We have the ability to respond. We, from here, can embrace metanoia, which is the Greek word for repentance. And it basically means think anew. At Tiferet, we have new thoughts. New, different, updated, appropriate for the times. But also we are open to the Yesod of Berea. Here is the Yesod of Berea, which is also the Da'at of Yetzirah. So this is where we receive spiritual input. This is our intuition. But of course, if we are fairly blocked, then what we're going to be doing is feeding through that Da'at into the Yesod of Berea our own beliefs. And that is how the law of attraction basically works. What we are feeding up into spirit is what spirit's Yesod, spirit's ego, spirit's foundation must return to us. So Kabbalah is a wonderful way of understanding your moon. Your moon sign is Yesod. Your sun sign is Tiferet. So the first job of anybody studying Kabbalah is to look at the nature of their moon and the nature of their sun, so they can understand where the blocks may be between them and the help that comes from above, the grace that flows down through Da'at to Tiferet, but which cannot get any lower to Yesod. So understanding how we work is really important. As I said, my moon is Scorpio. Scorpio is paranoid. Scorpio goes very deep. Scorpio is a worry in depth. And Scorpio is very controlling. Scorpio has its own cave and it will hide inside its cave, and it's got very strong boundaries, and God help anybody who gets through those boundaries and hurts the Scorpio. So I have to know that I must come from my Scorpio and use it to support my Taurus, so I can get into the real me, which is practical, reliable, passionate, probably boring, definitely a little bit greedy, but it's from that true self of me that I can start opening up to my soul. So if you want a Kabbalistic exercise, find out what your moon sign is and have a look at where you in your life live from that, because that's your ego. And some parts of the ego are really, really good, like look left, look right, look left before you cross the road. In the UK, of course. In other countries, it's look right, look left, look right. And that's another of the tricky things about Yesod. But have a look at your practices, how you repeat things, what you think other people think of you, what you worry about your tribe, about what comes into you, and see what differences there are between your moon sign and your sun sign. And then we can start to believe that there could be some way of accessing that grace which flows all the time to us, but cannot reach the ego.